Okay, today we have another story from the Book of Virtues. Bedtime story, Book of Virtues, William J. Bennett. I realize that is backwards now, but we're going to roll with it. Okay, so we are at How Much Land Does a Man Need? Leo Tolstoy. I'm just going to jump right in. This story by Leo Tolstoy, written in 1886, in its fundamental physical action, is a marvelous metaphor for the need for us to set definite boundaries on our own appetites. Again, we are in section 1 of the virtues, and this first virtue is self-discipline. There was once a pheasant named Pahum who worked hard and honestly for his family, but who had no land of his own, so he always remained as poor as the next man. Busy as we are from childhood tilling Mother Earth, he often thought, we peasants will always die as we are living with nothing of our own. If only we had our own land, it would be different. Now close to Pahum's village there lived a lady, a small landowner, who had an estate of about 300 acres. One winter, the news got out about that lady that she was going to sell her land. Pahum heard that a neighbor of his was buying 50 acres and that the lady had consented to accept 1/2 in cash and to wait a year for the other half. Look at that, Pahum thought. The land is being sold, and I shall get none of it. So he spoke to his wife. Other people are buying it, and we must also buy 20 acres or so. Life is becoming impossible without land of our own. So they put their heads together and considered how they could manage to buy it. They had 100 rubles laid by. They sold a colt and 1/2 of their bees, hired out one of their sons as a laborer and took his wages in advance. They borrowed the rest from a brother-in-law and so scraped together half the purchase money. Having done this, Pahum chose a farm of 40 acres, some of it wooded, and went to the lady and bought it. So now Pahum had land of his own. He borrowed seed and sowed it, and the harvest was a good one. Within a year, he had managed to pay off his debts to the lady and his brother-in-law, so he became a landowner, plowing and sowing his own land, making hay on his own land, cutting his own trees, feeding his cattle on his own pasture. When he went out to plow the fields or to look at his growing corn or at his meadows, his heart would fill with joy. The grass that grew and the flowers that bloomed there seemed to him unlike any that grew elsewhere. Formerly, when he'd passed by that land, it appeared the same as any other land, but now it seemed quite different. Then one day, Pahum was sitting at home when a peasant, passing through the village, happened to stop in. Pahum asked him where he came from, and the stranger answered that he came from beyond the Volga, where he'd been working. One word led to another, and the man went on to say that much land was for sale there, and that many people were moving there to buy it. The land was so good, he said, that the rye sown on it grew as high as a horse, and so thick that 5 cuts of a sickle made a sheaf. One peasant, he said, had brought nothing with him but his bare hands, and now he had 6 horses and 2 cows of his own. Pahum's heart was filled with desire. Why should I suffer in this narrow hole, he thought, if one can live so well elsewhere? I will sell my land and my homestead here, and with the money, I'll start fresh over and get everything new. So, Pahum sold his land and his homestead and his cattle, all at a profit, and moved his family to the new settlement. Everything the peasant had told him was true, and Pahum was 10 times better off than he had been. He bought plenty of arable land and pasture and could keep as many head of cattle as he liked. At first, in the bustling of building and settling down, Pahum was pleased with it all, but when he got used to it, he began to think that even here he was not satisfied. He wanted to sow more wheat, but he had not land enough of his own for the purpose, so he rented extra land for 3 years. The seasons turned out well and the crops were good, so he began to lay money by. He might have gone on living comfortably, but he grew tired of having to rent other people's land every year and having to scramble to pay for it. If it were all my own land, Pahum thought, I should be independent. There wouldn't be any of this unpleasantness. Then one day, a passing land dealer said he was just returning from the land of Bashkirs, far away, where he had bought 13,000 acres of land, all for only 1,000 rubles. All one need do is make friends with the chief, he said. I gave away about 100 rubles worth of dressing gowns and carpets beside a case of tea, and I gave wine to those who would drink it, and I got the land for less than 2 pence an acre. There now, thought Pahum, out there I can get more than 10 times as much as I have now. I must try it. So Pahum left his family to look after the homestead and started on the journey, taking a servant with him. They stopped at a town on their way and bought a case of tea, some wine, other presents as the tradesman had advised him. On and on they went until they had gone more than 300 miles, and on the 7th day they came to a place where the Bashkirs had pitched their tents. As soon as they saw Pahum, they came out of their tents and gathered around the visitor. They gave him tea and kumis and had a sheep killed and gave him mutton to eat. Pahum took presents out of his cart and distributed them and told them he had come about some land. The Bashkirs seemed very glad and told him he must talk to their chief about it. So they sent for him and explained to him why Pahum had come. The chief listened for a while, then made a sign with his head for them to be silent, and addressing himself to Pahum, said, "Well, let it be so. Choose whatever piece of land you like. We have plenty of it." "And what will be the price?" asked Pahum. "Our price is always the same, 1,000 rubles a day." Pahum did not understand. A day? What measure is that? How many acres would that be? "We do not know how to reckon it," said the chief. "We sell it by the day. As much as you can go round on your feet in a day is yours, and the price is 1,000 rubles a day." Pahum was surprised. "But in a day you can get round a large tract of land," he said. The chief laughed. "It will be all yours," he said, "but there's one condition. If you don't return on the same day to the spot where you started, your money's lost." "But how am I to mark the way that I've gone?" "Why, we shall go to any spot you like and stay there. You must start from that spot and make your round, taking a spade with you. Wherever you think necessary, make a mark. At every turning, dig a hole and pile up the turf. Then afterward, we will go round with a plow from hole to hole. You may make as large a circuit as you please, but before the sun sets, you must return to the place you started from. All the land you cover will be yours." Pahum was delighted. It was decided to start early the next morning. They talked a while, and after drinking some more kumis and eating some more mutton, they had tea again, and then the night came on. They gave Pahum a feather bed to sleep on, and the Bashkirs dispersed for the night, promising to assemble the next morning at daybreak and ride out before sunrise to the appointed spot. Pahum lay on the feather bed but could not sleep. He kept thinking about the land. "What a large track I will mark off," he thought. "I can easily do 35 miles a day. The days are long now, and within a circuit of 35 miles, what a lot of land there will be. I will sell the poorer land or let it to the peasants, but I'll pick out the best and farm it. I'll buy 2 ox teams and hire more laborers. About 150 acres shall plow the land, and I will pasture cattle on the rest." Looking round, he saw through the open door that the dawn was breaking. "It's time to wake him up," thought he. "We ought to be starting." He got up, roused his man who was sleeping in the cart, bade him harness, and went to call the Bashkirs. "It's time to go to the steppe to measure the land," he said. The Bashkirs rose and assembled, and the chief came too. Then they began drinking kumis again and offered Pahum some tea, but he would not wait. "If we are to go, let us go. It is high time," he said. The Bashkirs got ready, and they all started. Some mounted on horses and some in carts. Pahum drove his own cart with his servant and took a spade with him. When they reached the steppe, the morning red was beginning to kindle. They ascended a hillock and, dismounting from their carts and horses, gathered in one spot. The chief came to Pahum and stretched out his arm toward the plain. "See," said he, "all this, as far as your eye can reach, is ours. You may have any part of it you like." Pahum's eyes glistened. It was all virgin soil, as flat as the palm of your hand, as black as the seed of a poppy, and in the hollows different kinds of grasses grew breast high. The chief took off his fox fur cap, placed it on the ground, and said, "This will be the mark. Start from here and return here again. All the land you go round shall be yours." Pahum took out his money and put it on the cap. Then he took off his outer coat, remaining in his sleeveless undercoat. He unfastened his girdle. I'm at the edge of this screen here. Fastened his girdle and tied it tight below his stomach. Put a little bag of bread into the breast of his coat, and tying a flask of water to his girdle, he drew up the tops of his boots, took the spade from his man, and stood ready to start. He considered for some moments which way he'd better go. It was tempting everywhere. No matter, he concluded, I will go to the rising sun. He turned his face to the east, stretched himself, and waited for the sun to appear above the rim. I must lose no time, he thought, and it is easier walking while it's still cool. The sun's rays had hardly flashed above the horizon before Pahum, carrying the spade over his shoulders, went down to the steppe. Pahum started walking neither slowly nor quickly. After having gone 1,000 yards, he stopped, dug a hole, and placed pieces of turf, one on another, to make it more visible. Then he went on. Now that he had walked off his stiffness, he quickened his pace. After a while, he dug another hole. Pahum looked back. The hillock could be distinctly seen in the sunlight, with the people on it, and the glittering tires of the cartwheels. At a rough guess, Pahum concluded that he had walked 3 miles. It was growing warmer. He took off his undercoat, flung it across his shoulder, and went on again. It had grown quite warm now. He looked at the sun. It was time to think of breakfast. The first shift is done, but there are 4 in a day, and it is too soon yet to turn. But I will just take off my boots, he said to himself. He sat down, took off his boots, stuck them into his girdle, and went on. It was easy walking now. I will go on for another 3 miles, thought he, and then turn to the left. This spot is so fine that it would be a pity to lose it. The further one goes, the better the land seems. He went straight on for a while, and when he looked around, the hillock was scarcely visible, and the people on it looked like black ants, and he could just see something glistening there in the sun. Ah, thought Payham, I've gone far enough in this direction. It's time to turn. Beside, I am in a regular sweat and very thirsty. He stopped, dug a large hole, and heaped up pieces of turf. Next he untied his flask, had a drink, and then turned sharply to the left. He went on and on. The grass was high, and it was very hot. Payham began to grow tired. He looked at the sun and saw that it was noon. Well, he thought, I must have a rest. He sat down and ate some kind of bread. Ate some bread and drank some water, but he did not lie down, thinking that if he did, he might fall asleep. After sitting a little while, he went on again. At first he walked easily. The food had strengthened him, but it had become terribly hot and he felt sleepy. Still he went on, thinking, an hour to suffer, a lifetime to live. He went a long way in this direction also, and was about to turn to the left again when he perceived a damp hollow. It would be a pity to leave that out, he thought. Flax would do well there. So he went on past the hollow and dug a hole on the other side of it before he turned the corner. Payham looked toward the hillock. The heat made the air hazy. It seemed to be quivering, and through the haze the people on the hillock could scarcely be seen. Ah, thought Payham, I have made the sides too long. I must make this one shorter. And he went along the third side, stepping faster. He looked at the sun. It was nearly halfway to the horizon, and he had not yet done 2 miles of the third side of the square. He was still 10 miles from the goal. No, he thought, though it will make my land lopsided, I must hurry back in a straight line now. I might go too far. As it is, I still have a great deal of land. So Payham hurriedly dug a hole and turned straight toward the hillock. Payham went straight toward that hillock, but now he walked with difficulty. He was done up with the heat. His bare feet were cut and bruised, and his legs began to fail. He longed to rest, but it was impossible if he meant to get back before sunset. The sun waits for no man, and it was sinking lower and lower. Oh dear, he thought, if only I had not blundered, trying for too much. What if I am too late? He looked toward the hillock and at the sun. He was still far from his goal, and the sun was already near the rim. Payham walked on and on. It was very hard walking, but he went quicker and quicker. He pressed on, but it was still far from the place. He began running, threw away his coat, his boots, his flask, and his cap, and kept only the spade which he used as a support. What shall I do? He thought again. I have grasped too much. I ruined the whole affair. I can't get back before the sun sets. And this fear made him still more breathless. Payham went on running. His soaking shirt and trousers stuck to him, and his mouth was parched. His breast was working like a blacksmith's bellows. His heart was beating like a hammer, and his legs were giving way as if they did not belong to him. Payham was seized with terror lest he should die of the strain. Though afraid of death, he could not stop. After having run all that way, they will call me a fool if I stop now, thought he. And he ran on, and drew near, and heard the Bashkirs yelling and shouting to him, and their cries inflamed his heart still more. He gathered his last strength and ran on. The sun was close to the rim, and cloaked in mist, looked large and red as blood. Now it was about to set. The sun was quite low, but he was also quite near his aim. Payham could already see the people on the hillock waving their arms to hurry him up. He could see the fox fur cap on the ground, and the money on it, and the chief sitting on the ground holding his sides. There's plenty of land, thought he, but will God let me live on it? I have lost my life. I shall never reach that spot. Payham looked at the sun, which had reached the earth. One side of it had already disappeared. With all his remaining strength, he rushed on, bending his body forward so that his legs could hardly follow fast enough to keep him from falling. Just as he reached the hillock, it suddenly grew dark. He looked up. The sun had already set. He gave a cry. All my labor has been in vain, thought he, and he was about to stop, but he heard the Bashkirs still shouting, and remembered that though to him from below the sun seemed to have set, they on the hillock could still see it. He took a long breath and ran up the hillock. It was still light there. He reached the top and saw the cap. Before it sat the chief, laughing and holding his sides. Payham uttered a cry. His legs gave way beneath him, and he fell forward and reached the cap with his hands. "Ah, that's a fine fellow," exclaimed the chief. "He has gained much land." Payham's servant came running up and tried to raise him, but he saw that blood was flowing from his mouth. Payham was dead. The Bashkirs clicked their tongues to show their pity. The servant picked up the spade and dug a grave long enough for Payham to lie in and buried him in it. 6 feet from his head to his heels was all he needed. Whoa. 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 6 feet from his head to his heels was all he needed. That kind of hits you at the end. Very interesting. A rather pointed story, and I liked it. Next, we read Terrence, This Is Stupid Stuff by A.E. Housman. You know, I kind of want to read it now. That one ended on a downer. You know, they don't tell you that everyone dies. Well, that the antagonistic protagonist dies in the end. Terrence, This Is Stupid Stuff by A.E. Housman. With wry irony, Alfred Edward Housman advises preparing oneself for a world that may contain much good, but much less good than ill. Escapist solutions such as Drake, Burton-on-Trent mentioned in the second stanza. Oh, I know what this is. You know. We're going to do this next time. It is fun. I'm torn. I realize there's something else I have to do tonight. And I'm going to do this anyway. Okay, let's do this. Escapist solutions such as Drake, Burton-on-Trent mentioned in the second stanza, is a famous English brewing town, offer only the false answer of illusion. The best tact, Housman says, is to train for ill and not for good, and thereby steel oneself against all the unfairness life has to offer. And so he suggests a model Mithridates, king of ancient Pontus in Asia Minor, who made himself immune to poison by swallowing small doses every day. There's a bit of cynicism in this poem, but there's also a good measure of hard truth. We must practice bracing ourselves for all of life's contingencies. So just warning you, this is rather Old English. I'll try to stay in screen. Terrence, this is stupid stuff. You eat your victuals fast enough. There can't be much amiss, 'tis clear, to see the rate you drink your beer. But oh, my, the verse you make, it gives a chap a bellyache. The old cow, she is dead, it sleeps well, the horned head. We poor lads, 'tis our turn now, to hear such tunes as killed the cow. Pretty friendship 'tis to rhyme your friends to death before their time, moping melancholy mad, come pipe a tune to dance to, lad. Why, if 'tis dancing you would be, there's brisker pipes and poetry. Say, for what were hop-beards meant, or why was Burton built on Trent? Oh, many a peer of England brews livelier liquor than the Muse, and malt does more than Milton can to justify God's ways to man. Ale, man, ale's the stuff to drink, for fellows whom it hurts to think. Look into the pewter pot, to see the world as the world's not. And faith 'tis pleasant till 'tis past, the mischief is that 'twill not last. Oh, I have been to Ludlow fair, and left my necktie who knows where, and carried halfway home or near pints and quarters of Ludlow beer. Then the world seemed none so bad, and I myself a sterling lad, and down in lovely muck I've lain, happy till I woke again. Then I saw the morning sky, hi-ho, the tale was all a lie. The world it was the old world, yet I was I, my things were wet, and nothing now remained to do but begin the game anew. Therefore, since the world has still much good, but much less good than ill, and while the sun and moon endure, luck's a chance, but trouble's sure, I'd face it as a wise man would, and train for ill and not for good. 'Tis true the stuff I bring for sale is not so brisk a brew as ale. Out of a stem that scored the hand, I wrung it in a weary land. But take it, if the smack is sour, the better for the embittered hour. It should do good to heart and head, when your soul is in my soul's stead. And I will friend you, if I may, in the dark and cloudy day. There was a king reigned in the east, when kings will sit to feast, they get their fill before they think, with poisoned meat and poisoned drink. He gathered all that springs to birth from the many venomed earth, first a little, thence to more. He sampled all her killing sore, and easy smiling season sound Say the kings, when health went round, they put arsenic in his meat, and stared aghast to watch him eat. They poured strychnine in his cup, and shook to see him drink it up. They shook, they stared as white's their shirt, till them it was their poison hurt. I tell the tale that I heard told. Mithridates, he died old. I like that. I really like that. I wish I could do it more justice in a reading. But the wisdom's not bad. Really interesting. It's kind of hard to put a point to that. I'm going to process it out loud. Houseman says, to train for ill and not for good. What is it? Plan for the best, expect the worst, and thereby steel oneself against all the unfairness life has to offer. Bracing ourselves for all of life's contingencies. I really like that. I really, really like that. A good friend of mine told me, it's kind of off topic, but it's kind of on, to plan for the worst. When you're setting goals, set it for what you're able to accomplish, not necessarily what you want to accomplish, but do, like reachable goals, and plan for contingencies. Another good friend of mine said, plan the rest into your work, right? That's part of the work. And I guess to his point, plan for the worst, expecting that human things will happen and that you'll need to plan better and around that. And I'm sure there's a lot of other good stuff in that too. All right, anyway, thank you for joining, and we'll do more next time.